So Charles Anderson for Assemblymember Deborah Glick, then Hal Brill, and then Jamaica Tabor.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Charles Anderson, and I'm here on behalf of Representative Deborah Glick, who is up in Albany today, finishing up the legislative session. This is testimony on her behalf. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. As the Assembly member for the 66th District in Manhattan, I represent Tribeca, Soho, the East Village and West Village. But I'm here today on behalf of all rent-regulated tenants in New York, many of whom make difficult choices every day between keeping food on the table and paying ever-increasing rent. And I urge you today to institute a rent freeze for all rent-regulated leases this year. There is a housing crisis in New York City, and while some may argue that this is not the case, everyday New Yorkers have a different view based on their own experiences. Renters in the city increasingly find it difficult to stay in the city due to rising rents, lack of affordable housing units, and tenant harassment. Constituents regularly reach out to our office to express concern and frustration over rising rents and harassment from landlords who are challenging their residency and trying to terminate their rent-regulated leases. There simply aren't enough affordable housing units to meet the growing demand, despite the fact that newly constructed units were added in New York City, because for every rent-stabilized unit added to the system, 2 are lost. According to NYU's Furman Center for Real Estate and Urban Policy, Manhattan had the largest rent increases in the last year, and in the Greenwich Village, seeing a 6.7% increase in rent. 64% of New York City's tenants are renters, and when you couple that with the fact that the city has had a consistently low vacancy rate of only 3.5%, more New Yorkers have to spend more than 30% of their household income on rent. The 2015 proposal for an increase of 0% and 2% for one-year leases and 0.5 to 3.5% for two-year leases are historically low. And I would like to thank the Rent Guidelines Board for the progress made this year in the proposed rent increase ranges. However, for the reasons given above, I strongly urge you to freeze rents for this year to give our New York City communities a chance to catch up and continue to exist without unjust rent increases that residents cannot afford. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Hal Brill, then Jamaica Tabor, Robert Rosenberg, and Ann Cunningham.
Good afternoon. I'm Hal Brill, owner and manager of a small Manhattan building. I believe the inadequate guideline increases have created long-time rentals with rents too low to cover costs. Owners' costs always rise. They never go back. There's no rollbacks. Real estate taxes, water rates always increase, never roll back. I have not heard of any calls for any rollbacks in taxes, water rates, nor have any of my suppliers or workers announced, oh, let's roll back wages and costs. So lower products and service fees never happened. So no, quite the contrary, prices have risen, probably 5–10%. Regulations of real estate business have increased, and so the cost of complying with all the regulations that the city keeps imposing. So the Rent Guideline Board has failed in its mission. I do believe that they've failed to provide adequate increases for decades, okay, which have resulted in long-term tenants have the lowest rents of all well below subsistence levels. Multi-generational apartments are all too common, and they all have the lowest rents. So this progressive agenda of no increases is wrong, doesn't work, is broken. These low rents should have significant supplemental increases in addition to higher guideline increases. The system is skewed against all landlords. The Rent Guidelines Board has failed small landlords. It's failed all landlords. It allows only minuscule increases that not kept up with the inflation or your CPI numbers, and in fact fall further behind every year. Clearly the situation cannot be rectified by this board overnight, but some incremental steps need to be taken immediately. Raise guideline increases, reinstitute a city vacancy allowance so apartment rents can rise to subsistent levels, provide for minimum increases for lower rents. So the 20% vacancy allowance that everybody wants to get rid of is not enough to make up for the catastrophic situation that the Rent Guidelines Board exacerbates every single year and perpetuates. We need vacancy decontrol. These are the facts, year after year, meeting after meeting.
Mr. Brill, if you could summarize.
We need higher guideline increases now.
Thank you. Jamaica Tabor, Robert Rosenberg, Ann Cunningham. Ms. Tabor?
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to share my story a little bit, because I can see this is really, there's a lot to this. And what I can speak from is myself and my family. We moved into our rent-stabilized apartment in 2006. So our rent wasn't low when we moved in. But over the years, we thought, you know, we can handle this. We can build. We can actually grow. We can start a family. And we can build a community around our home. And so that's what we started to do. Over the past 9 years, our rent's gone up little by little, but we keep going. Okay, that's all right. We're going to work a little harder. Now we have 2 kids, and we connected with our community. We're involved in the local city park. I should add, I'm from Brooklyn. I can't come to the Brooklyn hearing, so I'm coming to this one. We're involved with the St. Nick's Alliance in Brooklyn. And while my son is little and I am home with him and doing some of these other community things, I'm also giving my time and service to the PTA at my daughter's school. Along with that, we hustle. My husband works full-time, more, 65 to 70 hours a week on salary. And any other time that, and his salary would in any other city provide a really good living. I'm a hairdresser, I do babysitting, I do bookkeeping. Anytime that he's not at work, I'm out there working. I'm finding clients, and I'm working to make money for the family. We're at the point where it is not worth it. We need a rollback so we can stay in our home. If we don't, if our rent keeps increasing, we will leave the city. We will take our family, we will take our community involvement, and we will have to go. We don't want to go. So, thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. Robert Rosenberg, Ann Cunningham, Brian Riley, and Edna Ellis.
Honorable members. I am in the affordable housing business, affordable housing industry, and there is a problem here, and that problem is perception. 1-bedroom apartments in Manhattan, they could go $3,000 to $5,000, and that's just approximately. My properties are in the Bronx. The average rents go from $800 to $1,200 for 1 bedroom. Not 3 to 6. So we are a different group than all these luxury people coming in and buying a $100 million apartment and a $99,000 rent. We are affordable housing, and you don't maintain affordable housing without an increase. You just can't do it. So we're a different group. They have 421 issues. They have 2,500 decontrol issues. I fight to pay the bills. I have approximately 1,000 apartments. They go on rent from 500. Not one rent, and I've been in this business a long time, is over 2,000. Not one in all my years of doing this. So we run it, even though we're in a stranglehold with fees, regulations, mandates. It's all a paperwork nightmare that costs money to answer and respond. And all these people that have been coming up and saying, the owner just wants to collect the rent, and I'm shocked, all these politicians, very fair and balanced. Roll back, roll back. Where is the fair and balanced over there? I can't believe even one group could automatically do that, but I do believe it. So today, with all the mandates, with all the violations, paperwork, you know, I could name. You can't say we don't do anything. I answer to probably 10 super agencies. They are all over us. I could never not do something that a tenant requests. And the court is not all for the landlord. The court is for the tenants. That's a lot of BS. So what I propose, freeze your taxes and water, slow down the growth of regulations, then talk about freezing rents. And you know, the rents that go between $250 and $1,900 that I have, the increases they're talking about is voodoo economics. Voodoo economics is where you put all this stuff together and wind up with all the things that are going on in taxes and water, and you get a zero increase. That's voodoo economics. So my suggestion to help would be a fair low-rent supplement. It would help some of the injustice. Rents that rent for less than $100 increase. Rents between $500 and $1,000, $50 increase. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rosenberg.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir.
I think you have a question.
Excuse me, sir. Do you pay real estate taxes on your 1,000 units of?
Of course.
And how have you seen real estate taxes gone up and you use 1 year?
Real estate
10
taxes go up constantly. Water and sewer slowed down to a very small 5% where it's been double digits. So water and sewer and real estate taxes constantly go up. They raise your assessed value, then you can only do 20% a year to catch up to it, but they're constantly going up. And
Have you ever had an instance where there was a real estate tax or a utility freeze from the previous year?
real estate freeze, no.
And same thing with utilities?
The only thing that I remember, and I go way back, is when the city used to take properties because owners couldn't pay the real estate taxes, and that could very well happen again. And if the city takes it back, they cannot do as good a job as I can. They can't run it like a professional, and if people just don't care because they got the vote, but everything's going up, and you have to have rents go up with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask you a quick question, sir? You said you have about 1,000 units. I'm wondering how many of those buildings you've applied for hardship increases for, because...
None. The formula doesn't work, and you cannot take my word or take my word. They don't include mortgage. They don't include so many factors. But if you try to do a paperwork nightmare like that, it's not going to happen. Run your building as tight as you can and try to make it. I have some buildings that make it and some buildings that don't. I have enough. I'm not like this poor person with one building. I have enough buildings that the ones that do not make it, I subsidize with the ones that do.
Ann Cunningham, Brian Riley, Edna Ellis.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman, members of the Rent Guideline Board, and all present. My name is Ann Cunningham. I have been testifying before this since the early 1980s. I am a housing specialist for Manhattan Borough President Gail A. Brewer. Today, I am testifying on behalf of the remaining tenants of the Tempo Hotel, formerly known as the Commander Hotel, a Class A residential SRO hotel. In my building, there are 200 units. 133 units are high rental, and 67 are hotel rent stabilized, which is an unusually high number for an SRO building. Most SRO buildings have 2 or 12 tenants. My landlord, Aimco, applied for a certificate of no harassment to the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. Due to the years of harassment we experienced as tenants, that application was denied in January 2015. A copy of the decision is included in this testimony, along with letters from 6 long-term tenants that currently reside at the Tempo Hotel. Rents have continued to rise over the years and have contributed to the increase in homelessness. Oftentimes, tenants must choose whether to pay rent or put food on the table. Tenants in all categories are struggling, and it would be corrupt to bless these landlords with an annual increase. While the need for reform is urgent, I sincerely appreciate the Rent Guidelines Board and the work of their staff. Thank you once again for the pleasure of participation.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. Brian Riley, Edna Ellis, Alan Firestein, and Sharon Can.
Hello, I'm a building owner in Manhattan. This hearing should be about the economics of these 100-year-old rent-regulated buildings that bear the brunt of all this regulation. An example is that I purchased a building in March 2003 with taxes of $37,900. Today, those same taxes are $307,200. This means that just to break even, I need income of $731 from each of my 35 apartments to just pay the real estate tax bill. Factor in huge water increases and heating bills along with constant maintenance costs, and you're conservatively at $1,800 a unit to break even on a monthly basis. So is it fair that I have a 50-year-old single woman that has two two-bedroom apartments for $378 a month? Of course it's not. It's beyond ridiculous. This is Manhattan, not Kansas. I have 16 rent-regulated apartments with an average monthly rent of $486 a unit. We are not asking for market rents, but a fair system for all. I scraped up the money and took all the risk, while the city with no skin in the game collects 45% of its annual income through the real estate industry. In hindsight, I should have purchased newer buildings without all these onerous regulations. Why are the long-term owners of the oldest buildings constantly subjected to monthly threats of new regulations when developers get tax abatements? It comes down to money and power, basically. There has to be a balance, not just condemnation, as we have done more for the average New Yorker than any other real estate group. My highest rent would be below the lowest rent in any new rental building, and my average rent is almost laughable compared to these buildings. As my bottom line continues to shrink, my rent-regulated tenants, who I have always treated the same as my free market tenants, will surely suffer the consequences of this over-the-top regulation. Rents must go up, not just a few percent, but significantly for us to survive or lower our expenses and everyone can coexist. There has to be some common sense to this process. This is about economic reality, I say, but you all say with your actions that it comes down to politics and votes.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Riley. Are there any questions? Edna Ellis? Ms. Ellis?
I've heard a lot today from tenants and landlords, and I get it. I don't have any more money. It's not complicated. I get it. Small business owners need to make profits. They have expenses. I get it. One problem, I don't have any more money. What am I supposed to do?
Thank you for testifying, Ms. Ellis. Alan Firestein, Sharon Khan, Romulo Garro, and Ken Gale. Mr. Firestein? And if I mispronounce that, I apologize.
The clock already started.
We will give you your full 2 minutes.
Okay.
Oh no. There you go.
You have to think about lofts. I bought my loft building in 1981 to protect the recording studio which I built with my bare hands. I inherited 3 tenants that occupy 50% of the building. One tenant inherited a house in another state. One tenant has a house upstate that he bought recently, which he goes to in his new SUV. He pays $1,129 a month, 2,000 square foot loft. Since your staff says there was a price increase of 0.5% this year and 5.7% last year, that's 6.2%. Why can't I get a 6.2% increase for the last 2 years? My fuel bill went down 1.8%, not 21%, because the gas price was offset by a very cold winter. In actual dollars, the cost of fuel is very small compared with my total expenses. My fuel cost went down by $55, but my real estate tax went up by $6,049, not a 0% increase. It's gone up by an average of 18% for the past 6 years, each year, and is now $85,900. That's based on the market price for selling the building, but I have a business, my business, in the building, which I want to keep there. I'm trying to provide fair rents for all of my tenants, but they have to pay their fair share. My loft tenants' rent increases in the past years have not been fair, and many small loft building owners, like me, have well-to-do tenants who are not only getting a tremendously low rent discount, but they're getting million-dollar buyouts at some point in the future. Did all the previous RGB boards, after approving lower increases than what their own staff recommended, overcompensate owners? Are you saying that they erred? Loft tenants have been getting super low rents for years. It's time for them to pay their fair share.
Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Fairstein. Sharon Ken.
Hello. Thank you, Madam Chair and the Rent Guideline Board, for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm the president of a tenant association, the Upper West Side. The Upper West Side was Mitchell-Lama. It's now mostly rent-stabilized, big buildings that have some rent-stabilized housing. A lot of apartments are just going because people can't afford the MCIs that we get. The MCIs for oil burners, when we were perfectly happy with the Con Edison heat. We had no say in the matter, but yet we have to pay $3.50 an hour for attorneys to fight these MCIs. Within the last 2 years, we've had 3 MCIs, and it's just unstoppable. I don't have a house anywhere. I depend on my rent-stabilized home. I've lived there 41 years. I love the Upper West Side. I do community work like many other people in the Upper West Side, and I just want to stay. Thank you.
Thank you. Romala Guerrero, Ken Gale, Ed Klein, and then Regina Karp.
Good evening, Guideline Board. My name is Romulo Guerrero. My family migrated to this great country, like many of yours have done in years looking for a better life. Years later, with numerous odd jobs and long working hours, my parents were able to purchase a property of 28 units in Hamilton Heights. This is also where I grew up and lived over 30 years, working and bonding with the great families to build relationships with our tenants. The RGB and the tenants must understand that we, the small property owners, want to help keep affordable housing, but we cannot provide it with zero increase or rent freeze. Please understand, we cannot maintain and do repairs and keep our tenants safe in these aging post-war buildings. I am living proof that not all landlords are rich or millionaires. I need this increase because I want to continue to provide great service to my tenants by replacing an age-old boiler and roof, which this year we are in the works of putting something together to do both, or at least one, which is going to cost us over $200,000. Throughout the years, we've been just patching and doing repairs because the cost of building, replacing the boiler and doing the roof is astronomical. There are other expenses that I incur that are not MCI, major capital improvements, or individual apartment improvement increases. These are just everyday wear and tear and expenses of our property. But let me express the real problem and the real major expense that we all property owners are facing: the taxes, water, and sewer rates. These increase every year at an alarming rate. If these increases continue, owners are forced to decrease repairs and maintain the property, and in some cases even abandon the property, which that's not my case, and the majority of us do not want to do that. We need the city to assist small property owners with subsidies and tax credits to alleviate some of the high costs as we continue to provide affordable housing. We continue to operate our property at such a low profit margin that we still continue to work another job, second job, which at times helps to pay the building expense. We need increase for 1 and 2 year leases so we can provide our tenants with the service. I ask you, the Rent Guideline Board, to please consider and understand that we need your assistance in saying yes to a rent increase and no to a rent freeze. Thank you.
Thank you. Ken Gale, then Ed Klein and Regina Karp.
Thank you for holding this hearing and for the opportunity to speak. I'm Ken Gale. I want to emphasize that decisions made here affect many other areas. I produced and hosted an environmental radio show on WBAI-FM, and in 2008 was part of an environmental coalition that brought commercial net metering to New York. That resulted in the creation of thousands of jobs in New York City alone in cleaner and healthier air. But the jobs created were working class jobs, and it's nearly impossible for someone like that to be able to afford to live here. When Superstorm Sandy hit and did all that damage, thousands of people from all over the U.S. came up here to offer their skills and get jobs. But again, working class jobs. Most of them couldn't afford to live here, but could afford to live in New Jersey and Long Island, and those areas are recovering from Sandy much faster than New York City is. They have skilled labor, we don't. Our rents are slowing down our ability to meet the lowering of our greenhouse gas emissions, a bill, number 378, that was passed unanimously last year by the City Council. Because again, the work to make our buildings waste less energy is done by people who usually can't afford to live here, and there are other places that can and do use their skills. That's a shame, because we need those people and the jobs they do. When only the wealthy can live here, you end up with people who don't work here and don't spend their money here. Loss of jobs and places for working families to live affects the entire economy of the city. Students are in the same situation. If you think the outer boroughs are a solution, let me remind you of what happens to the subways when there is a severe nor'easter or hurricane. They shut down. People forced out of Manhattan cannot get to work, and the economy of the suffers a severe blow. Climate chaos is creating more winter and summer storms, and they're more severe, and keeping working class people from affording to live here hurts our ability to recover from those storms. More and more places to live are held by fewer and fewer corporations. City building owners have an incredible number of loopholes that enable them to kick people out of their apartments. They kick people out regardless of age, family status, or ability to pay. Those loopholes must be eliminated, and these rubber stamp rent increases must end for the future of the city and everyone in it, well, nearly everyone. When the air or water are clean, thank an environmentalist. If not, become one. Enough said. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Ed Klein, Regina Karp, Kevin Duane, and David Dartley.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak before you in this greatest democracy that the world has ever seen. I think we should have an applause for the USA, because it is the best, most free forum that we have enjoyed in the last 2 millennia. My name is Edward Klein. I'm the managing partner of my own law firm, Klein & Solomon. I also happen to be a landlord, or a property owner, if you want to use a different terminology. I've given you out, just want to focus on 2 points with you. I've given you out a summary of investment that my partner and I have made over a 4-year period in a 55-unit elevator building in a nice neighborhood of Flatbush, Brooklyn, Ocean Avenue. We've renovated 22 of the 55 apartments. That is to the benefit of tenants as well as landlords. No MCIs for them. Obviously, you get the AIA increases. No MCIs for doing over the whole way, for painting all the ceilings and all the common areas. First time in 20 years, according to most of the tenants. The tenants welcomed us with open arms after a year because they saw we turned the building around completely. But I'm here to tell you that the $200,000 that was invested in this building from 2010 to 2014 would be impossible if you have 2 or 3 years of zero increases one after the other. This is a business after all, and people need the money to reinvest in their real estate. This shows you in one building alone, you can have $250,000 in investment over a short period of time. Who does this benefit? Besides benefiting the tenants, it benefits all the vendors, the people that supply the stoves, the refrigerators, the floors, the bathrooms. I can go on. We have 25 vendors that improve our apartments. I improve the apartments because it's good business. I improve the apartments because they're 60, 70, 80 years old and they've never been improved. The fact of the matter is that would become impossible if the Red Guidelines Board passes a virtual zero increase 2 years in a row. But I'm a lawyer at heart. Compromise. Ladies and gentlemen of the RGB jury, it's time to compromise. Put aside the rhetoric from right, put aside the rhetoric from left. The fact of the matter is there's got to be a middle way, there's got to be a way to compromise, to make it right, work, and to make it right. Just one more point, it'll take me 20 seconds. The RGB has these studies. Respectfully, studies don't include everything. And I'll give just 2 examples. There's a backflow preventer device, which costs $15,000 to $20,000, which the DEP has imposed on thousands of buildings throughout the city, which is not included. Admittedly, it's new, but it should be included because it's a $15,000 to $20,000 item. It simply is something that's attached to the boiler, which prevents water from going back. And the second thing is bed bugs. Bed bugs has been added to our roster of duties. It's $500 to $600 per apartment. And we didn't bring the bed bugs. They came in from the outside. Nobody's blaming anybody how the bed bugs came, but it's tens of thousands of dollars, also not included in the RGB study. So respectfully, the RGB study is flawed in that major issues that impact our bottom line are not counted. But let me get back to my main point.
Sir, your 2 minutes
Thank you.
are up.
I'm done.
Thank you.
My time is up. You've been great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Regina.
Thank you.
Okay,
Questions?
enough.